Welcome to episode 137, Spotlight, Supplier Assessments, where we focus on how organizations verify the security practices of their partners instead of merely trusting what paperwork claims. The SR-6 control emphasizes that assurance cannot rely on self-attestation alone. Vendors and providers form essential extensions of internal operations, but their weaknesses can quickly become yours. Supplier assessments provide the structured mechanism for verifying whether security expectations are met in practice. They combine evidence gathering, observation, and analysis to build confidence that promises translate into real protections. In a world where interdependence defines resilience, supplier assessment transforms trust from an assumption into a measurable fact. Building from that foundation, supplier assessments take several forms: desk-based reviews, on-site evaluations, and hybrid approaches. A desk assessment relies on documentation, policies, certifications, and system evidence analyzed remotely. On-site assessments go deeper, observing how controls operate within the supplier's environment and allowing direct interviews with personnel. Hybrid assessments blend both, using remote review for preliminary evaluation, followed by selective field visits for critical suppliers. For example, a low-risk software vendor may complete a remote questionnaire, while a high-risk managed service provider warrants an in-person validation. The assessment type should reflect impact and exposure, balancing depth with practicality. From there, scope selection becomes the anchor for focused assessment. Not every supplier or control requires equal attention. Scoping decisions are guided by risk tiering. Critical suppliers receive comprehensive reviews, while lower tiers undergo streamlined assessments. The scope identifies which systems, services, and control families will be tested, ensuring alignment with contractual and regulatory obligations. For instance, an assessment might target data protection, identity management, and incident response for a supplier handling sensitive records. Defining scope early prevents wasted effort on irrelevant areas and ensures that findings truly represent the supplier's influence on your organization's risk posture. Building on clear scope, effective assessments use questionnaires that map directly to verifiable artifacts. Instead of broad yes or no questions, these tools ask for specific evidence, screenshots, policies, system settings, or test results. Each question links to an objective proof item, creating traceability between claim and confirmation. For example, a question about encryption may require a configuration sample showing algorithm and key length. Mapping ensures consistency across assessments and eliminates ambiguity. Well-designed questionnaires serve not as checklists, but as structured dialogues that reveal both compliance level and operational maturity. From there, maintaining evidence lineage, who provided it, when, and how, is critical to credibility. Each document, log, or screenshot should include origin details that confirm authenticity. Metadata, signatures, or submission timestamps show that evidence came from authorized personnel and represents the correct timeframe. For example, an access control list submitted by a supplier should include the preparer's name and date of export. This lineage ensures that findings are defensible if later reviewed by auditors or during disputes. Clear documentation of provenance prevents confusion, strengthens transparency, and sustains confidence in assessment results. Building on that rigor, assessments should sample controls across people, technology, and process. A balanced sample checks not only technical configurations, but also procedural and human factors. For example, reviewers might examine user access reviews for people, patch management for technology, and change control for process. Sampling across these dimensions captures the full picture of operational discipline. It also helps uncover gaps that appear only at the intersections, where technical tools depend on consistent human follow-through. A well-designed sample provides representative assurance without overwhelming the supplier or assessors with unnecessary scope. From there, validation must extend into the supplier's secure development lifecycle, patching discipline, and incident response practices. These operational pillars reveal how security is maintained over time rather than at a single moment. Assessors might review code review logs, patch timelines, or incident tickets to verify responsiveness and learning. For example, a supplier that patches critical vulnerabilities within days of disclosure shows mature risk management. Evaluating these practices confirms that security is not static, but embedded into daily operations. By probing these rhythms, organizations see how suppliers turn policy into living process. Building on operational visibility, supplier assessments must also review how vendors oversee their own third-party subprocessors. A supplier's security is only as strong as the partners they depend on. Assessment questions should verify that downstream vendors are vetted, monitored, and bound by equivalent controls. For instance, a cloud service provider using subcontracted data centers must demonstrate that those facilities meet the same standards of physical and logical protection. Understanding this chain of oversight prevents hidden dependencies and ensures that contractual risk management extends through every tier of the supply ecosystem. Oversight of oversight sustains assurance continuity. Building further, suppliers must be reassessed after incidents or significant changes in service scope, ownership, or technology. A major breach, acquisition, or migration can alter control effectiveness dramatically. Reassessment confirms that mitigations were implemented and that lessons were integrated into new operations. For instance, a supplier experiencing a credential leak should undergo a targeted follow-up review of identity management practices. Timely reassessment demonstrates vigilance and responsiveness. It reinforces that trust must be re-earned whenever the underlying environment changes, keeping supplier assurance aligned with evolving reality. From there, assessment results should feed directly into contract renewals and procurement decisions. Renewal should never be automatic. It should be informed by performance data, findings history, and responsiveness to remediation. Suppliers that consistently meet requirements earn confidence and potentially reduced audit frequency. Those with recurring issues may face conditional renewals or stricter oversight. Integrating results into renewal decisions ensures that contracts reflect current, verified trustworthiness rather than outdated assumptions. Procurement thus becomes a mechanism for continuous accountability, linking commercial relationships to demonstrated security performance. Building on accountability, exceptions and waivers must be documented with explicit expiry dates and compensating controls. When a supplier cannot meet a particular requirement, such as full encryption coverage, an approved deviation may be allowed temporarily. However, this allowance must have an expiration date and a defined mitigation plan. For example, a supplier may operate under a 6-month waiver while implementing a new encryption module. Tracking these exceptions prevents quiet erosion of standards and ensures that temporary risks remain visible. Expiry-driven accountability converts exceptions from indefinite permissions into time-bound responsibilities. From there, metrics such as adherence rates, improvement trends, and supplier movement across risk tiers give leaders insight into program maturity. Adherence shows how many suppliers meet requirements on schedule. Trends highlight whether risk posture is improving. Movement indicates whether suppliers rise or fall in classification. For instance, a steady increase in compliant suppliers over multiple cycles signals effective oversight and collaboration. These metrics transform raw assessments into strategic intelligence, revealing where to invest resources or strengthen relationships. Quantified insight turns supplier assurance into a measurable component of enterprise risk management. In closing, supplier assessment outcomes should directly influence contracts, renewals, and operational decisions. The SR-6 control reinforces that verification must be continuous, structured, and anchored in observable proof. By combining documentation review, on-site validation, and follow-up measurement, organizations replace blind trust with earned confidence. Each assessment builds a clearer picture of who their partners are and how securely they operate. When results guide action through remediation, renewed terms, or escalation, supplier management becomes a cycle of improvement rather than a cycle of paperwork. True trust in the supply chain comes from seeing, confirming, and holding all parties accountable to their commitments. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.